Welcome to the Western Bowel podcast series, with talks on traditional spiritual teaching and its application in the world today. The intention of this series is to offer something useful for those who are drawn to study themselves and engage practice on the spiritual path. New talks are posted twice each month. The content of the talks is for informational purposes only, and not to provide any kind of counseling, medical, or professional advice. This podcast is titled Union. The talk was given by Lama Barbara Du Bois on November 8, 2025, via Zoom. Lama Barbara is a longtime teacher in the Tibetan wisdom stream of Buddhdharma, working with students in the United States and Europe. She has for many years been serving as Lopön, Master Dharma Teacher, for the Garchen Buddhist Institute, western seat of His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche. She is known for her wisdom, clarity, joy, and humor, and for her fierce and tender love. Lama Barbara is the author of Light Years, a Spiritual Memoir, Brave, Generous, and Undefended, Our Teachings on the 37 Bodhisattva Practices, and Original Innocence, which is forthcoming. About this presentation, she wrote that it is a look into the union of the two truths, absolute and relative, the two that are not two. How all appearances and phenomena and all beings are this union in every instant. How mind of separation, dualistic consciousness, arises with the erroneous conceptualization of self or selfness in anything, including us. And how this is continuously generating samsara, the realms of wandering and suffering. How any fixation, identity formation and clinging, reactivity, defensiveness, or even slight tension is a sign and signal of this self-grasping, and how all of this is suffering created by mind of separation. How our spiritual work is to love all and to know directly the true nature of being. There is no separation. If there is benefit in this talk for you, please consider sharing the link to it or writing a review on social media or on one of the podcast platforms. Lama Barbara Du Bois.
I'm really glad to be here. I need to say right at the outset, I'm actually quite sick and have been for a while with a sinus thing. So if I sound funny, it's because of that. But it also means I will stay with us as long as I can. I just might at a certain point say, oh gosh, well, I just think I've said as much as I can possibly say tonight. On the other hand, the whole process of giving Dharma is so energizing that usually what happens is that I just get a lot of energy from being here with all the people and pouring out the Dharma that is our great love, and feel very energized until the next morning, so that's what so I have to pay attention to that a little bit. There's some specific things I want to talk with you about tonight, and I would like it to become a conversation, but first I really want to pour some things into the common cup here, so that there's a container for what I want to speak about. In the invitation for the event, there were a few lines from a piece that I wrote many, many years ago that is still guiding my work. And I want to read that whole piece to you. And I would like you to have it if it's meaningful to you. I just don't have a way to do that. So it's called Union. In this dreamlike life, we appear for a moment in a reality we call relative, while our true nature is the absolute itself, unborn and undying, changeless, lucid, radiant, infinite. Absolute and relative, the two truths, the two that are not two. All appearances are their union. We are never not that. We already are what we aspire to become. We are templates of truth to be laid bare by love. The laying bare is the spiritual work, and love, inseparable from truth, is its ground, path, and fruit. To be what we already are, only two things are required of us: to love and to know. To love completely all beings and all phenomena, and to know directly the true nature of being. For the first, we cultivate the great love. For the second, we cultivate awareness, to recognize and rest in the true nature. These two are not true. In dictionary conventional definitions, union is usually defined as the bringing together of elements, people, things, threads, energies, whatever it may be, that have not been together, and the union is created by the bringing of them together. That's not the union that I'm wanting us to look at tonight and to experience, or to bring into our realm of experience. I want us to look at primordial union, there from the beginning, never not. That's not the bringing together of things. That is the oneness, that is the entire reality that we refer to as the absolute. It is always very inspiring to talk about that, but there's something missing in us, in our understanding of how to live it, because we feel separate. We don't feel necessarily that we're entirely one with the one. And that's why we call people on the path seekers. Many have momentary experiences or expanded and extended experiences of that sense of oneness, but then consciousness again asserts itself, and the consciousness is not the same as mind. And the experience of being in samsara. Now, these words are coming from the Buddhidharma tradition. I know that they're all very familiar to all of you, so I'm going ahead to just speak in that way. Samsara actually means the wandering in the realms of suffering and confusion. It doesn't mean the realm itself necessarily, but the wandering, which is sometimes translated as transmigration, over and over again, taking a life form, having a life, wandering, and then not recognizing the nature of reality, and therefore returning again and again and again. In the condition that we call relative reality, we're experiencing the result of a cause that exists in the original individuation of consciousness for beings as a whole and for each individual being. And it occurs also moment by moment in the course of every day. So it's not a one-time event. It's constantly recurring. And that moment, are some of you familiar with this prayer called the Prayer of Kuntuzangpo? Have some of you seen this? Yeah. I recommend it highly. There are many translations. The one we use at the Garchen Institute is this one, and I can make it available, and it can be probably reproduced easily enough for people who want it, or I may have enough copies for those of you who would like to have it. The reason I speak of this is that there is a description in this text. It's a prayer text, but it's a text of instruction that describes meticulously the eventuation of this individuation of consciousness and how it shapes our experience going forward. And briefly, what is described is the state of undifferentiated beingness is experienced when first being is coming in. And then an awareness, inchoate, not specific, but just an awareness of another beingness that is not the one that's experiencing. And with that, a stiffening, a reaction that is compounded of doubt and a kind of wavering doubt and fear, a certain fear reaction to that which is unknown and unidentifiable, but definitely being experienced. And the differentiating consciousness that is in that state of simply being, perceiving this other, let's call it an object, or other consciousness, other consciousness, reacts protectively, stiffens. And that stiffening is the formation of self. Obviously, I'm not spending a lot of time elaborating on this, but I want to just, it's a framework to understand things with. The experience of the that consciousness that we are has not been consciousness up to then, but now becomes that. It is no longer simply the resting in simple beingness and awareness. And the reason that this is critically important is that from this moment, this split-second moment reaction, self derives, and with it, other. And that is the expulsion from Eden, for sure. That's the knowledge, the tree of knowledge, right? Of good and bad. And the moment that self differentiates in that way and differentiates off of an experience of other is the moment that dualistic consciousness forms. And I think we're all familiar with that. And we have a lot of fun with it, but it's the source of all suffering because it's ignorance of the true nature of reality. There is no differentiation in the true nature of reality, which, as we hear here, it's unborn and undying, changeless, lucid, radiant, and infinite. There's no speck in it. There's no self in it or other in it. They're all of the true nature. We all are of the true nature. That's the union that I want us to become aware of. Really, it can be life-changing to live in that awareness. And it's the simplest fact that I have ever encountered, but one that is, I love this term from the 60s, mind-blowing. It's a good context in which to use it. This moment occurs over and over and over again in our ordinary lives. This is not a one-time event. This differentiation of consciousness from awareness, from beingness. An experience that I have had, I've tested this in my own experiences because I needed to see, well, why is this important? And what I discovered was there's certain contexts in which it's very obvious to me when it happens in my mind. One is if I'm in a room by myself, and I'm not a particularly fearful person, actually, but if I'm in a room by myself, even though I may know there are other people in the building or even in the adjacent room, if I'm in a room by myself and just being there, when I become aware of another person coming into the room, I can feel, because I was looking for the response, I can feel that little stiffening. It's not, oh no, go away necessarily, although of course it can be. It's more, a kind of recognition of another and myself differentiated, and then depending on who it is or what the circumstances are, there can be a whole host of emotional reactions that come along with that. Or there may be simply a relaxation upon thinking, oh, it's so-and-so coming for such and such or whatever. But that little moment of stiffening is exactly the same moment that's described in this differentiation of consciousness from being. And that's why it's important for us to be aware of it. One of the ways we elaborate this is through our, well, remember at the outset, I described this condition of wavering doubt that is experienced as one perceives the other, another presence. Beings really, we human beings really desire, this also happens with creatures, though I've seen it with insects, the same thing happen, and with other animals as well. We really want things to stay the same, or to be having change that's in our own hands and with our own intention. We want to be in control, and even when we don't desire the control, we want some kind of sense of continuity of our own existence and what that existence is. So huge amounts of energy go to creating and maintaining identities, of which we have many. I'm a teacher, I'm a woman, I'm, 85, I live in Arizona, I used to live in Appalachia where I was born. I mean, all these things have an identity quality to them, particularly this thing about Appalachia. I haven't lived in Appalachia for years, but it's my heart. It just grips me. And I recognize I really like to assert that identity. I'm an Appalachian, For what purpose? It gives me a sense of me. Just simply a sense of meanness, not meanness, me, and huge amounts of our life force and our minds and our speech and our activity go into creating these identities and maintaining them, and they have to be maintained. Right? They can crumble in an instant under this or that influence. One can be, threatened by what somebody else says about us or thinks of us, or, how you think you look, and what people are saying about you in your absence, and whether that thing that you accomplished really was your own accomplishment, or was it really significant, or was it really trivial? I mean, a lot. That's all about identity formation and maintenance. We're really hardworking in that world. And what all that is, all of it, is what we call in the Dharma self-grasping. And self-grasping is described as the root of all suffering. Grasping to that separate selfness. It's not about being selfish or self-centered. Those are expressions of it or effects of it. It's the actual grasping to selfness. I don't think the translation is excellent. I wish I spoke Tibetan, but I don't. But self-grasping is frequently misunderstood as being selfish and self-centered. That's not what it is. It's our insistent grasping for the solidity, continuity, and significance of our selfness, or the selfness of anyone else, seeing, having some relationship to that selfness, or to the thought that there is a selfness in anything, a pencil, a sound, a rug. There isn't. Because all of the phenomena that we recognize as appearances and events and things and beings in our world all arise on the basis of cause. All arise on the basis of cause. And they all exist only as long as the conditions allow it. And then when the conditions fade and the cause is used up, to put it colloquially, gone. Then that particular phenomenon is no longer. And so obviously it's common sense. You can't say anything that arises from cause and exists only determined by conditions has intrinsic existence, selfness. I mean, it's evident, is it not? That doesn't make any sense. How could it have intrinsic existence, selfness of its own, when it comes on the basis of a cause and will collapse when the conditions depart? So it's very simple. I mean, that's, a lot of people get, myself very much included, in the early days of study and practice, when the word emptiness would be used. And it could make a lot of people very anxious, this concept of emptiness. And me and myself included, that I remember sitting on my meditation cushion. It's about this high, an ordinary meditation cushion. This is not one of these big, mattress kind, but one of these, little simple mats. And I was sitting on it in, upright in a, good position. And I began to sense something of what we refer to as no intrinsic existence, meaning emptiness. I started to feel it a little bit. And I have to say, I panicked. I felt as if I were going to fall off my meditation cushion, as if I were sitting on the edge of the Grand Canyon. It was that extreme. Right? And I know this is not unique to me. Most people don't admit it, though, but, I love to admit it. I'd rather admit all my faults than I can relax. So this becomes a big concept, this concept of emptiness that's an impenetrable, it's the most profound and inaccessible, and it's the answer to all your questions about the actual nature of reality and so on. And so how can you possibly imagine that in your own feeble mind you could possibly master this concept? It simply means no intrinsic existence, cause and consequence. And conditions and impermanence. It's all it means. So please enjoy frolicking in emptiness. But self-grasping is the attempt that we all engage in to deny that, or to control it, to contain it. And there's not one of us that doesn't have self-grasping. This is what gives rise to samsara, this turn to the self-other, the binary, the foundation of dualistic consciousness, and the grasping to self. It is the origin of all suffering. So the implication for us is very poignant, isn't it? Very poignant. We are in this material reality. And as long as we're here, we need a self of some sort that is the organizing principle for being able to live in material reality. You have to have agency. You need to have a mind that can organize, that can make decisions and so on, take care of yourself and others and feed yourself. Get a job. So it's not to say that we should be without an agentic self, without a functioning self, that we need that. If you don't have it, you're going to end up probably in a mental hospital. I mean, that's what happens to people who don't have that at all, with no intactness. I remember Rajneesh at one point saying, don't even think for a minute about attaining enlightenment if you have still an undeveloped personality. If your personality is just sort of rudimentary, meaning your agentic personality, the functioning self that allows us to live in the world. And he said, that is not enlightenment. That's a case of arrested development. I thought it was he was very trenchant in some of his observations, as I'm sure you remember. And that one really struck me, because I've known a lot of people over the many years that I've been teaching in college and giving Dharma. I've known quite a few people who want to deny the self, and think that, I mean, in some traditions, it's even called, the mortification of the flesh will be one of the ways that one does that, or, never taking self into consideration and so on. I mean, there can be extreme or subtle, whatever, but that's not a place to go with our efforts. It's not about denying the self that exists in the context of relative reality, but we need to let go of and really clear from our consciousness and behavior the self-grasping impulse that is the root of suffering. There's everybody, we're all sitting here together. We could be mirrors for each other, but we also have mirrors at home, and also the mirrors of our own minds. We can recognize when that self-grasping reactivity is activated. It's very obvious when it's happening at some levels, and then it becomes, as you work with it, subtler and subtler and subtler to find the fine threads that are holding together that mistaken conceptualization. One of the ways that we can see self-grasping in ourselves is our reactivity to others, to what others say to us, how others behave, how others don't behave, or what they don't say. And we have a lot of opinions, don't we, about one another? If you look to see what all these wonderful opinions are based on, you'll find a lot of them are arising from the root of something about you. That person existing in relation to you in some way has triggered for you some form of self-grasping. Whether you don't like what they said to you, or you don't like the way they look, or you think they're putting on airs, or whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. Any reactivity of that kind is based in self-grasping. It's a differentiation of self from other. I'm aware of it in myself all the time. Are any of you aware of what I'm talking about? Is this familiar to you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and some of us are more reactive than others, and some are more reactive to this or that than others are. But we've all got our basket of self identifiers, let's say, the ways in which we feel attacked or diminished by others if this such and such is not recognized, or ways in which we feel attacked and diminished if it is recognized, but not in the way we want it to be. So you see how I find this funny, but it's in living it is rough. It's why living is rough. And have we ever seen a time, people of our generation? I know you're all younger than I am, but we've been on the earth for a while. Have you ever, in your lifetimes, seen a more florid display of self-grasping than the wars that are going on, than the dominance disordered national figures are displaying, and then the reactivity of just ordinary people who are not in charge of anything except their own lives and so on, the reactivity that we are experiencing in this country is polarization and, accusations flinging back and forth. All of this has its root in self-grasping. And the reason it's the cause of all suffering is that it's divorced from recognition of the true nature of reality. And if you're not aware of and in alignment with, attuned to the true nature of reality, you're going to be suffering. You're going to be stubbing your toe, not once, but every half an hour on reality, because it's not going to adapt to you. So the key that I want to name here, that for me has been and continues to be both obvious and startling every time, is this. It's very simple. It's mentioned here in this teaching that I read. There is nothing that can be separate from its true nature. Yes? Does that register intelligibly? Nothing can be separate from its true nature. And if we take this very brief, pointing out to instruction to the nature of true nature, of unborn and undying, changeless, lucid, radiant, and infinite, if that's the true nature, and we're not recognizing that as our nature, we are not aligned with true nature. And that description of true nature, or that pointing out instruction to true nature, it's the true nature of absolutely everything. It's not just the true nature of us as human beings. It's the true nature of a tree, of a pencil, of a stone, of a drone, of an airplane, of an ocean, of a tick. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. How do we all feel about the tick? The most despised living being on the planet, probably the tick, yes? Its true nature and your true nature are exactly the same. So it's so simple when I say it like this. Everybody just looks very happy and relaxed about it. If you start to live in that consciousness, like picking up, I've been using my thermometer today. Its true nature is unborn and undying, changeless, lucid, radiant, and infinite. Its true nature and mine are the same. This is the union I want us to become really aware of and familiar with. It entirely changes the complexion of living a life in relative reality. So there's a teaching in the Tibetan tradition, I don't know if it's in other traditions, that all appearances are one's own mind. Now, that's the most important piece of information for people who are in the bardo, in the experiences of between death and rebirth, according to the Tibetan way of describing that. There's great displays of color and sound, and very frightening things happen, and very beautiful things happen, and the base instruction. This is from Guru Padmasambhava. The base instruction is recognize all appearances as reflections of your own mind, and this is the pith also of the instruction given for the time of death. At the time of death, it is taught that everyone, every being, not just humans, sees the clear light dawn. That there is an instant at the time of death, that particular instant, as the body falls away and mind is free, clear light shines. The word is used as dawns. Clear light. The clear light dawns for each being, and if you recognize it as your own mind, that is liberation. So Tibetan Buddhists practice for years various practices relating to the time of death in order to be present and ready at that moment to recognize the clear light. And if you don't, you'll have another lifetime or many, who knows. And I remember when I came into this life, I came in with a sense of spiritual failure, because it really from an extremely young age, really early childhood, because I had I can't call it a memory, but I had something like a memory of the time that I had died before this new lifetime that I was now in. And I realized I did not recognize the clear light. Now, in my childhood, these weren't the words we used. It was God. God was that I had not become one with God was what my sense of shame and spiritual failure was about. And it moved me through my whole life to seek God. Eventually, I didn't use that word anymore. I used the word truth, which is the word I'd use now. And that experience of spiritual separation from what is true was anguish for me. And I know I'm not alone like this. Maybe I'm unusual in having known that so early, but I lived that sense of separation, and it bled into my life generally. That I felt separate and wanted to maintain that. I became attached to that sense of separation. And I remember once being in a train, and we stopped at a station somewhere, and I had an actual vision of everybody walking around in their own separate bubbles. And I thought, that's it. That's exactly the way I experience reality. Well, that vision was definitely a manifestation of my own mind. We're not all walking around in separate bubbles, right? It's more like we're walking around with parts of our skin attached to other people's parts of skin, or whatever. The connection is that profound for us. But this is the basis of suffering, because not because it's just confused, but confused in the most profound way, separate from, and therefore not understanding the nature of the reality in which we have our living and being. So the work of the path, principally in the tradition that I have been in this lifetime, the work of the path principally is to diminish and constantly be working to and recognizing to diminish self-grasping. So then there's the good news, because that one's a hard task. The good news is that love is the way that we do that. And we all have love. We all have self-grasping, and we all have love. It's not, love, we experience love as an emotion, but it's actually a quality of our true nature. So love is actually the natural radiance of the true nature of reality. It's sometimes called compassion, the activity dimension of the true nature. And in this piece that I read to you, I said, to love completely all beings and all phenomena. Well, I'm not overstating the case there. That is really what our work on loving is directed to. Loving completely all beings and all phenomena, those that we think are bad and those that we think are good. Love transcends good, bad. Love transcends and transforms that way of thinking and brings a quality of freedom to one's life that is very hard to describe. It's joyous. It's a joyous freedom. There's no more any traps. There's no longer any traps waiting for us. one of the traps currently, of course, is to think ill of those who are behaving really cruelly and badly. Well, you're either practicing love or you're practicing not love. So to think ill of somebody who's thinking ill of everybody doesn't help you at all. I'm reading the newspapers regularly now. I'm sure that many of you are also, but a lot of people on the spiritual path think that's damaging in some ways. I don't. I need that, and one of the reasons I need it is my first teacher, Venerable Dahani Wahu, a Cherokee lineage holder and a teacher also in the Tibetan tradition, used to speak of bioresonance. The way in which our minds interact with the phenomena of the world and shape them, including the way the waters move in their beds, and including the shapes of mountains and the weather. And she also spoke often about how the currents of mind, the currents of the mind of human and other beings, but most particularly humans, are circling the globe always. That there's as if they're, when we see pictures of Saturn, we see the rings, as if the currents of the human consciousness are circling our globe and affecting everyone, everywhere, all the time. So as we commit ourselves to the work of unconditional, universal love, no distinctions, no exceptions, everything and everyone, no matter what it looks like or sounds like or how it feels, we have the capacity in even our early work on that part of the path, we have the capacity to be influencing the entire globe. Because there's only one mind, many, many consciousnesses, but only one mind, that true nature mind. And so the power of our consciousness changing is immense. And the impact of what's happening currently, and not just now, of course, but currently it's very ripe to see how the thoughts and actions and words of humans are affecting the entire globe. It's very, very visible, very palpable. So people often, react when I say love everything and everyone unconditionally. And people sometimes react and say, well, that's, for, Garchen Rinpoche, or for, for a Buddha. And thinking one is not that, that's separation mind. Separation not from the person, but from the reality. That nature that we call Buddha nature is the true nature we're talking about. Open, empty, radiant, lucid, unborn and undying. And I'm here to testify that this business of learning to love everything and everyone, it's the most fun I think I've ever had in my life, and it's just infinite freedom. Now I'm just still plodding along the path. I'm not saying I'm out here like somebody who's a great teacher or something. I'm not saying that, but it releases us from all the things that are traps in our own minds. First of all, it shows us them, right? and then if we persevere, it releases us. I can't tell you the relief just to have one mind trap gone. So I'm sure you've all experienced something like this, but love is the way to do it. It's infallible, and it's the only essential. Self-grasping will persist and continue to grow and deepen and harden to the very degree that one is not loving. And with every slight increase in your capacity and intention and expression and demonstration and realization of actual love, with every tiny little increase, there is a corresponding decrease in your self-grasping. So the obstacles are melting away in the warmth of the warmth and radiance of love. They melt away. Look, I couldn't say this stuff if it weren't true. I have a vow about speaking only words of truth, and I'm speaking from my own experience, which is very, low grade still. But even from this level, I can speak authentically. What I'm saying is authentically my own experience, and Garchen Rinpoche, my Lama. Some of you know of him. But he's the first human being I ever met who embodied what my great highest aspirations were. And I didn't know until I met him that it was possible to love everyone. Now, I have to tell you a secret about loving everyone. I mean, you may know this already, but in case you don't, this is very liberating. You don't have to like anyone. Like and dislike are personality functions. They're all about me and mine. I, me, mine. They're all about self, right? Like and dislike. They're preferences. Preferential is not love. Preferential is choosy. I'll love this one and not that one. If you let go of, there's a Zen saying, actually, it was one of the first things I ever read in the first Buddhist book I ever read, that just be done with like and dislike, and everything becomes perfectly clear. But, pithy Zen sayings to a beginner are very inspiring or ridiculous or, whatever they may be. But that, when practiced, is powerful. Powerful, powerful. It's like a knife through butter. Warm knife through butter, rather. So I'm just going to consult my little scribbles here to see if there's something I haven't said that I must say, and then we'll start to converse. Okay, just a couple of rules of the road that I'm trying to open up in front of all of us. Don't fixate, and don't create identities. It's fine if you like to sew. You don't have to say I'm a seamstress or, tailor. It's fine if you are a tailor. You don't have to say I am a tailor, therefore I da, 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 da. I don't know where these examples come from. So anything that is not aligned with, that is actually not fully one with the true nature of reality, anyone or any being of any kind in that state is going to be in the state of suffering. That's what suffering means. The key for us, particularly in these times, is to be aware there's only one suffering. As there's only one mind, many consciousnesses. So only one thing known as suffering, like there's only one thing known as electricity, and all the ways in which it's used are differentiations of that. So there's one suffering, and each one of us experiencing our own suffering is, by that experience, lifting slightly the suffering of others. Particularly powerful with a conscious dedication of that. Like, I offer my suffering to relieve others. May mine be sufficient. It makes it very intentional, which it strengthens it. And one of the sufferings that we experience as humans, and I know other critters do also, I don't know how they manage the minds about it, but as humans, when we experience suffering, we think that that's bad, because we're sort of taught, well, we don't want to be suffering, we want to be happy and so on. suffering is purification of its cause. And our suffering is always arising from a cause that we ourselves have established. And in the suffering is the process of purifying that cause. So the paradoxical practice for working with your own suffering is, first of all, to be grateful. And it may, you may need to say, I am so grateful that I'm suffering. It may sound that ridiculous to you, but then you can follow it up by saying, I'm so grateful I'm suffering because I just found out that is lifting suffering for others. Right? You have a context for that. And that's it for me. Yay. So now let's just open up and talk. It's not quite like sitting in a circle, but we'll just act as if we're sitting in a circle. Thank you for letting me go on that way. I just really felt strongly that I wanted to be here tonight to say these things to you. And I didn't know who'd be here, but I knew that the people who were here were the people I wanted to say these things to. So, oh, by the way, the book title for the new book that's coming out eventually, but don't have a publisher yet, haven't gotten that far, we changed the title. And so it's not called Original Innocence anymore, but Original Innocence is, in fact, what we've been talking about tonight. Just that mind that is just clear, unencumbered, present. But the title I think we're going to go with is great. I'm not going to tell you what it is now because I want to be able to change my mind again. I'd love to hear anything you all want to share. Questions or comments?
The question I had was, is there true nature to an event?
An event occurs in the true nature, yeah. There's nothing but the true nature. The true nature is absolute reality, and there's nothing but that. Everything else is a reflection of it or a manifestation of it. I'm curious about the context for your question.
When you were holding up the thermometer and you were naming just things, I was curious about events or that action in action quality of which is life itself, so it's just making it the rolling, tumbling aspect of life and the true nature of that.
Yeah, we're illusory. We come and we go. And events, most of the events we're creating, unless, in some way we're contributing to. So I don't know if one rests always in oneness with the true nature in every aspect of one's being. Are we then eventless? Is our world then eventless? I don't know. I'm not that wise. But it's great. It's a good question.
When you say that statement, there's so much freedom, that sense of being eventless. It's so freeing.
Yes. And also there's so much freedom in the state of being with others without having to like or dislike, without having to approve or disapprove, without having to agree or not agree, without having to fight or to care for. Without the partiality, we can relax. If you have partiality and preference, you have to be vigilant. You have to pay attention. What's happening? Are they, people doing something I don't like? Somebody that I don't like just walked in, and you're on the alert. What an exhausting existence that is.
But isn't it exhausting to be around others who are doing that all the time? Do you just roll with it? I tend to start to bring up other options or something, but then that's partiality.
Well, sometimes it's creativity. What I find from my exalted position of is the following exalted confession. I still am experiencing at this late date when I'm like on the threshold of leaving, right, I'm still finding there's conflict in my interpersonal relationships sometimes, which is just startling and confusing. Like, how could that be? Well, not everybody sees things the same way. And, and not everybody speaks perfectly all the time, including me. And so sometimes there's a little blow up. And what I find, the most recent experience I had of that was extremely painful, for a couple of days. And then I realized, oh, well, that was some karma completing. And the love didn't go anywhere. Just the willingness to continue to have a relationship together went somewhere. That's not there anymore. But the love continued, and both people were aware of that. We were both aware of that and articulated that. So there's caught in patterns, and eruption of karma, recognition of love continuing, and all of that is freeing. So I have let go of this dear person. I've let go, and it's very light. It's like there's nothing hanging on except the sort of sometimes the wish that, that wish it hadn't happened. But it's better to be free than to be caught in something that's conflictual and you don't have a way of resolving it. So I don't know where I'm going with that. Nowhere, probably.
It was helpful to know that you go through things.
Yeah, I'm just a person.
I'm sorry, but you're pretty profound and, lovely in your.
Oh, that's the Dharma, honey. I'm wearing Dharma. That's the Dharma. No, I'm just a person. Just, everything that I'm talking about here that's problematic. I got that too.
Barbara, thank you. You're talking about exactly what I wanted to ask you about. So much of my connection with your book is about stanza 5.
Stanza 5?
Yes.
Remind me, I don't have it in my mind right now.
It's about love everyone.
Yeah.
However, if there are people you don't get along with, it's okay to separate from them short time or a long time.
Yeah.
I want to just be honest. I find comfort in that middle ground because the elegance of the clarity and stuff you're talking about, there's wonder in that. And yet the reality of my material world is such that either I am paying attention to engaging my separation, my identification, or I'm looking for that middle ground that says, maybe I need to step back from my reactivity towards a certain person. Or you were just suggesting that at some point you can have love for someone, but not have a relationship. Mm-hmm. And what I'm bringing up here is that this one teaching is pretty expansive for me in that learning how to not engage in relationship, but do that with integrity is so different than deciding that I just don't want to be with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm glad you brought all that up.
That's a very subtle distinction, isn't it, in the moment?
Yeah. That's the problem with all this, is that it's subtle.
Well, let's add, and we're so stubborn.
Oh, yeah.
Reality is stubborn too.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
The term self-grasping, are there other terms, or is self-grasping the clearest way to say whatever it's saying that there is? That's why you're using that term. I'm not familiar with it.
Well, as I mentioned, I don't know the Tibetan, so I don't know what other kinds of translations might exist for that concept. I think there might be other ways of saying it, but this is the one that's taken hold in contemporary translations from the Tibetan. And I think it's not a very satisfying one because it does lend itself to confusion, I think, for us. I think fixation is another word that I think is accurate to what self-grasping is trying to say. Fixation of any kind is a grasping to that version of reality, or that version of what you possess, or that version of the weather or whatever. Fixating on anything is grasping for it, grasping at it, and grasping to it. And as soon as you do that, you can no longer dance. You're stuck. As soon as we're fixated on anything, we're stuck there. So we may be grasping to something, and not think of that as stuckness. We may think of that as possession or power, but anything we grasp to, we're stuck on. It's like it's got us. And the same thing is true about the concept of selfness, that if we grasp to ourselves having selfness, intrinsic, an intrinsic identity, an intrinsic self, we're stuck there. That concept then has a control over us rather than we being free in relation to how we experience ourselves and others and the world. We're stuck in a fixated relationship to our own self.
That sounds like what I understand identification.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Okay. I think that's really a helpful insight. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I spoke of identity earlier. I mean, when we fixate on identities and we keep forming and elaborating and maintaining our identities, that is fixation on self. It's interesting, isn't it, to parse the words like this? Did you want to go someplace else with that?
No, when you use that term, I didn't understand it in terms that have meaning for me.
I have a problem with it. I mean, I think it's a clumsy and confusing term, self-grasping. And because in our language, at least, there's so many other ways that you can understand that. But so I think fixation, self-fixation would be another way to say it. And that might be more accurate to the way we're actually experiencing and living with it. Maybe that would be more accurate. But anyway, I'm using the term the way it's used in the Dharma literature, translated from Tibetan into English in this period. And I don't read everything and by a long shot. And so there may be other translations I'm not aware of. There undoubtedly are. So thank you.
I can give a simple example, I think, of self-grasping. This morning, my husband and I think what we were doing, now that I hear this term, we were helping a friend form a new identity, a new part of her identity. And because she's a retired psychologist, but she wrote a book and it's well received and all this stuff. And so you're an author, There
you go, fixating her.
Exactly.
That's a really good example.
Hopefully she won't get fixated on it, but I'll leave that up to her.
The image that came to my mind when you said that was somebody throwing darts that went right through her clothes, and she's hanging now from the target.
Right. Yeah, as an author.
That's right. Label, author.
Yeah, exactly. But I had a question about what you said about suffering, and that can be purifying, or I guess what you were saying, it is purifying. But you said something at the very end, like when we suffer,
it can lift the suffering of others.
Yes. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. There's only one mind. So if we take some of the suffering, then somebody else doesn't have to experience that. And it's not that global and solid a thing. The way it's described by Rinpoche is just very lovely. He says, if with your suffering is lightening the suffering of others, not and lifting it, lightening it or lifting it, and it's not by my suffering you specifically will not suffer. It's not like that. It's more, it's subtle and deep. It's very deep.
Yeah. And with intention, sometimes I do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I say, this grief that I am experiencing, for example, may this help other people who have this grief heal or find solace, find peace or whatever. And so I do that intentionally and it feels really good, but I don't know what it's actually doing.
Well, I think it's very clear from the way he frames this, that is efficacious.
Yeah.
It's happening whether you say it or not, but for you to be specific in that intention makes it more powerful.
It feels right for me, and I just do it naturally. I mean, no one told me to do it or anything, but...
Well, now I'm telling you to do it.
Okay. Okay. I will keep doing it.
Okay. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I always wonder, like, how effective is this?
We don't know how effective, but it's very, very clear from the way he speaks of it, and also the Tonglen practice. Some of you are familiar with.
I love it.
There's always a question: am I going to get some on me? No, the answer is no. We're not that developed yet that we can take it on in that way. But the other question is, is this doing any good? And the answer is yes. I think it's unequivocal yes on his part. That's my experience also. When we do those kinds of practices, we can feel the lightening.
It's true. Yeah.
Okay. I have the same thought around prayer. Is prayer doing any good? I try to pray for people a lot, but is it doing any good?
Yes.
Yes. Same idea, right?
Yeah. Yes. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're praying bad things.
No. I pray for the highest good of all beings. That's kind of my prayer, but whatever that means. But really,
what I've been taught about this specifically, and in terms of my own practice, what I've experienced is that the higher and deeper and broader your intention, the more profound is the impact and benefit. So when you say for the benefit of all beings, it's a phrase that we just kind of toss off, But if we say it with conscious awareness, for the benefit of all beings, and then maybe even visualize some of those that we normally wouldn't think of wanting to pray for example, right? We got lots of examples. Apparently, from what I'm hearing from my Lama, who is impeccable, is it efficacious.
Okay. I've been tied up in a struggle with one individual person for a little while now. And the idea of, letting go of that energy around that, that she's wrong and I'm right. And I'm always going into how do I practice these things? When you say love is everything, that makes a lot of sense. And whether you want to say God or you want to say truth, I say things like, it's all God. I just try to use that as a mantra to keep this focus that it's all truth. It's just a little way that I try to practice this and to remember.
Well, it's a big way for your mind.
Yeah, it is.
Good.
Yeah, it is good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there's a few things that you said that have really stuck with me. I don't know if I could phrase a question. It seems like there are internal answers that I just have to see how they arise. But I have three things. If you have anything to say about any of them, that'd be great. It doesn't seem like you can avoid stiffening, and not just in relationship to others, but just in life, in the process of life. Something happens that I feel is threatening. It's a primate response to things. And it just seems like patience and self-compassion is relevant and just relaxing in the moment.
Since you hold that view about stiffening, specifically, for example, a way to practice with that would be to become increasingly aware through your clear awareness, increasingly aware of the moments when it's happening in your mind.
Yes. Also, identification, it gets subtler and subtler, it seems like to me. there's times when I don't see it. I know I don't see it. I can sense it, or that I don't want to see it. An example might be if I'm identified as a practitioner. I don't mean like some great thing or anything. It's just like who I am. And
it's who I am. Is that what you said? Who I am?
It's like who I identify as.
Mm-hmm.
But there are many other ways too. I just feel that I'm identified, and maybe it's the same as you just said, to be just clearly more aware of times when that's happening.
Be aware when you make a statement of that's how I am or who I am. That is that's a kind of identity strengthening or identity emphasis. Just, I don't mean, this isn't criticizing it in any way, but try on for size when somebody says, "Oh, you're such a great practitioner." I'm assuming that's what they're saying. Okay, so when somebody says, "Oh, you're really, I follow your example," then how about instead of that's just who I am? How about instead, I love the teachings, I love the practice, which is such a different statement. Mm-hmm. There's no clinging, nothing clingy. Clingy.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, part of it is that I've looked at practice as, oh man, a life raft.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't mean it as like something great. That's not what I was intending to say.
No. I wasn't interpreting it that way, but I was trying to give you a more subtle, less self-oriented, less identity-focused option as a way of the mind could. It's just to play with the reality that we're always creating and trying to maintain our identities. That's just the reality of the way we are. We're like that. We all do that, and to play with that and find other ways to respond when that is evoked a little or touched or stimulated. It's freeing to do that. It can be quite freeing to do that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, welcome.
And then the third thing is that you said that a paradoxical practice to relating to suffering is to be grateful.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Well, not one of mine. What I want
quickly. So, if you start doing gratitude practice,
well, I want to say that I'd be in denial if I said that I was grateful for loss. But I do get the point that Swami Ramdas said that pain.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt this flow for a second. Saying I'm grateful for loss is not the same thing as saying I'm grateful for my suffering. You don't have to be grateful that you lost someone you loved, but you can be grateful for the suffering which links you with that person and all beings who suffer, and thereby lightens the suffering for all, and also purifies for you whatever cause may exist for the suffering that you're experiencing. Because the purification isn't just that it cleans things up in some general way. The purification that suffering is the purification of its specific karmic cause.
The karmic cause relating to that circumstance? Or
I don't know what the karmic cause is. I can't even see my own, much less yours. But there's nothing in this relative reality that we abide in at the moment. There's nothing that happens without a cause. So our karma is the choices that we make about how we speak, about how we listen, how we react, how we act, how we are kind, how we're not kind. Whatever actions, whatever choices we make, all are seeds of karma. And they all will have a ripening result. Not they may, but they will. And not predictable about when or how. But suffering, so any kind of suffering that you experience, whether it's the loss of a person or, a stomach ache, it has a cause. It wouldn't exist if it didn't. That's why we can say definitively no intrinsic existence, no intrinsic selfness to that phenomenon. Right? So that cause is purified by the suffering it occasions. Now, karmic cause is going to self-purify regardless. It will come to maturation and then it will be done, that specific cause. But when there's suffering involved, that is the means by which it's resolving. But that doesn't, it will resolve one way or another anyway. But if there's a negative cause that we've placed in our own mind stream, some kind of suffering, discomfort, or something difficult will be the flavor of the result. But I have to say something about suffering. It's used as this sort of global term in the Dharma. And one of my students, who's a Dharma teacher in Europe, said that he wanted to tell me what the original meaning of the word was in Pali or Hindi, the word dukkha. He said the original meaning is of a cart with four wheels, all of which have different sizes and different size and shape. So the word suffering actually points to it's going to be a rough ride, folks. Find every way you can to enjoy it. I really cherish that teaching. So you weren't done. You weren't finished. You had another comment.
Well, one thing that I do recognize about suffering or about loss is something Swami Ramdas said, just about suffering in general. I think that pain and suffering soften the heart of man.
Yes.
And that's been clearly an outcome. And it is for all human beings. So,
and for some, it appears to harden, and which is hard for us to see. I mean, it's painful to see that, but it's temporary.
Barbara, you said that you might get off after a half an hour or so.
Yeah, I'm never sick when I'm giving Dharma. But I'll be sick again tomorrow, maybe. But maybe now I'm cured from sitting with you all tonight. Right? It's been a rough couple of weeks over here.
Well, we are overtime, but I think everyone would be willing to hang out especially if there are any genuine questions that people would like to ask.
I'm glad you're saying that. Yeah.
It's still available. So if anyone has anything, please feel free.
It doesn't have to be a question. You may have a pebble of wisdom to drop into the pond. Okay, a little one like that is fine. It just, we won't be swept away by the waves, at least. That was an invitation.
Okay. Well.
No?
Yeah, suffering. Suffering is. That's all I have to say.
Right. I like that. The suffering, and then you see he just shrugged his shoulders. Okay, good. Very incisive. Thank you very much.
All right.
Just briefly, I remember when I first met you, we used to have these great Dharma debates, you and I, because I was all about self-observation and the practice of that. And you were saying, well, there is no self. And we go around. And,
how obnoxious I was.
Well, me too. I mean, but the Dharma is the Dharma. And we are in agreement with this. Mm-hmm. Your practice really does help. It helps me to put words to something. It's more descriptive. It helps my practice become more descriptive. I come from the practice of self-observation, self-remembering, and it's no different to what you're speaking to tonight. But you use different words around it, and it really helps to enliven that, and inform me about that.
Good. Tell me, the word self-observation,
right?
Is that what I might call clear awareness? I don't think so. I think self-observation would be using clear awareness to see one's own process. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's more like what we're learning to do, I believe. But when we're talking about identification, I was so glad to hear you say, doesn't mean you have to like everybody, because it's
that's such a relief.
It is. That's exactly how I received it. It's not that I'm doing something bad and wrong. It's just like, that's not how it works. It doesn't work like that. Your discussion also about suffering is very, very useful. It's like how to intentionally engage in suffering, because with any kind of pain, our tendency is to pull away.
Yeah.
And so it's about engaging it. So this is one of the things I have learned just in my daily life, to engage with something that's very uncomfortable to do, but it's great practice, because then it brings out the humanity in another person as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm learning so much about this, but thank you. I just love the way you put words together differently from the way I put.
It's helpful to hear different things from a different angle that are trying to.
But it's all the same. It's all the same kind of intention.
Yes.
And attention.
Yeah.
There's a lot of relief in there too. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of levity too.
Well, one of the things about loving everybody and everything is just the laughter that comes just pouring out. It's just really, it opens the channels to joy that's just without limit. But I want to speak for a minute, if I might, about one thing that is current for many, is the terrible things happening in wars and, with fascist movements in the world, not just in our country, but everywhere. And I find it really essential, as well as also very beneficial, to intentionally practice on that. On the specific people that are doing and saying the things that you think are at cause for the suffering of others. It sort of staggers the mind how people can make certain choices and think that that's a good thing because it's good for them, and leave and have impacts on millions of people who are affected. But when I think of, and these are mostly men that I'm thinking of that are coming into my mind at the moment, and I don't need to name them. You can have the ones that you want in your mind. If I think of them as my son, it really helps a lot, because then I have access to my grief, that my son, whom I love and care for, is so confused and causing such harm. And my grief is the open door for the love to simply be, not to have to do something with it or about it, but that I can then love that person who's causing harm to millions, and grieve for their confusion and wrongdoing and the suffering that it will bring them. But it's very, the word that wants to come into my mouth, which is one I almost never use, it brings consolation to me, to be able to see wrongdoing with that intimate embrace. It consoles me and strengthens me and allows me to know that the power of my intentional love for that person is not wasted. It's not wasted. It has its benefit. I won't live to see it, but it's not wasted. And you can't see what I'm doing now, but I find myself in those occasions doing exactly what I'm doing right now, which is this. I'm kind of like rubbing my spiritual heart center as I'm speaking, because it is evoked in that conscious choice to console my errant child and to console myself for my motherly grief, and to hold open the embrace and hold open the love. People don't cause other people harm unless they are ignorant of the true nature of reality and the true nature of all beings, that people don't cause harm intentionally to others who are aware. So that's what we're talking about, tonight, is how to be aware. I'm very grateful to be here with you. It's really beautiful. Sometimes these rooms have so many people in them, I have to keep flipping back and forth to see all the faces. But this has felt very intimate and very, really, really precious. I'm really glad I was sick and able to do this. Oh, can I just give you can I take up a little bit more of your time? Just want to give you one example of what it means to, not identifying. Okay. So in the late fall, I was diagnosed with cancer, and it was a good one, a really rare form of cancer. And, but at my age, it wouldn't be a problem, because I'm not going to live long enough to have all the terrible effects of this cancer. They come, as it progresses, and it's a slow growing thing. But so there's been about at least 6 surgeries, and because the only way to diagnose the condition as it changes is to get in there, and that you can either cut somebody open. In this case, you go up through the inner pathways, not the spiritual inner pathways, but the female inner pathways. And so it was clear to me immediately that I started to buy into I've had cancer before, very serious and very dramatic and very, I worked with it the same way then as I do now, but I started to buy into the idea that I have cancer, now I'm a cancer patient again, and now I'm having all these surgeries. I mean, it's just, it's what's happening. And so it became, the way what I was thinking. And at some point, I was shocked to realize I was making an identity out of this, and that it wasn't the identity I would actually like to be having. So why am I doing that? Right? And so I stopped. I just stopped. And then along came the most recent surgery, which was a good one. There's a lot, at my age, anesthesia is rough. It really is rough. And it takes a long time to recover from it. And so this one was a really good surgery, a lot of anesthesia. And so I was to meet with my surgeon. She looks like she's about 21. I used to say 15, but I've seen that she's older than that. So I'll say 21 now. And as you get older, they're all getting younger anyway. So, but this one really is young for her. She's at the top of her career. She's a specialist in this kinds of cancers, and she's just terrific. We have a great time together. And so we were going to meet. She took biopsy samples because some of the tissues looked a little funny to her. She just wanted to be sure that they were checked out. And so she sent them off to the lab, and we were going to meet. And so on the 22nd of October, we had our meeting, telemedicine meeting, for me to get the biopsy results. I'm okay. And I don't know what it is with my mind, but for some reason, I'm fine with cancer. It is not a problem. I love the cancer cell. I consider it a confused child, and I love it. So it's just fine. But I was aware I might be getting some interesting news from this biopsy. So I asked her. She looked a little hesitant, which is not a characteristic of her. And I said, "Okay, what's going on?" She said, "Well, I did send them off to the lab." I said, "Well, yeah, duh." And she said, and I got the results back, and then there was still a little hesitation. I said, "What have you got to tell me?" She said, "Well, they couldn't do the tests." And I thought, "Oh no, I'm going to have to go back and do another surgery." She said, "No, the tissue's dissolved. What more do you want?" Right? So not identifying is not making solid. So keep it fluid, keep it open, don't fixate. You are not a cancer patient. You are a human being. How simple is that? Anyway, isn't that a great story? I just burst out laughing, and she said, "Oh yeah, right, I forgot it's Barbara." Right, but she started laughing too. Right. But she had been nervous. She didn't know. She'd never seen it before, heard of it happening. So anyway, that's the note I want to end on. Everything dissolves and we can rejoice. I love you very dearly. I hope I'll see you again. And if I don't see you again, I hope you'll just be as happy as I am. And even more, I hope you'll be much happier than I am. Please exceed me in your joyfulness. Okay, bye, everyone. I love you. Bye.